What are some signs that a relationship has run its course? Story 1. When you don't care if she leaves or not. Dealing with this right now. I love her and want to be with her, but she has some mental health issues that she's not willing to get help for. She threatens to leave, and I just say goodbye and walk away. Update for anyone who cares. Came home after work to her in a grumpy mood. Told her to calm down or leave me alone. Spent the night playing games. Next morning told her she needs to get help or we aren't lasting much longer. She has an appointment Wednesday. Answer. I'm a firm believer of the in sickness and health, but my ex refused to get help. She had a psychiatric nurse friend she trusted tell her she needed some help, but she still refused. It got a little extreme. It was when I caught myself thinking I should check under her pillow to make sure she doesn't have a knife there. Then I realized this was no way to live. I feel badly for my kids. They're adults, and I took a big hit financially, but I still have my sanity and some peace. Story 2. FYI, to anyone reading through this, a good portion of replies here are also totally normal occurrences in any long-term relationship. There is an ebb and flow to being with someone for many years. Some days you may want to hang out, and others where you want to be left alone. Oftentimes you can go several days without having a noteworthy conversation. Just because something like this occurs doesn't mean your relationship is doomed. What it may mean is that you need to put some effort into sparking things back up. I've had the personal experience of finding venomous spiders in my underwear drawer, and it was a telltale sign that I hadn't taken my wife out to dance in a few weeks. After putting in a bit of effort, my wife and I felt like we had just started dating. I no longer had to fear amputation of my nethers. Answer. So true. I basically giggled at some responses because they are so teenagers looking through pink glasses like. Being with someone in a long-term relationship involves many mentioned situations. It is like a roller coaster with ups and downs. It takes time, effort, patience to listen and understand, and self-work in relationship to maintain it. No wonder why so many people divorce so easily. But great relationships last forever, and divorcing someone because life got boring at some point is so wrong. There is always space for improvement, but both people must want it. Story 3. When you start fighting about a lot of meaningless things, in many cases it'd say it's a manifestation of the hesitation to deal with the quite harsh truth that you no longer feel that you want to be with the person. Having to face the fact that the person you've been so close to, the person you've shaped your future with, the person you sacrifice a lot for, the person you might have introduced to your friends, etc., is really difficult. So it's easier to say that your exasperation with the person is because they didn't do X. Answer. It doesn't have to mean the end of a relationship. When people get accustomed to each other, they often stop noticing the good things in each other, while the small annoyances become grating. Being aware of your attitude and making an effort to be positive and to mention good things about your partner and complimenting them can really turn things around. My parents started marriage counseling when the fighting became too frequent after 30 years together. It may feel silly to say things like, "Thank you for picking up groceries," or "You look really nice in this shirt," when you've seen the shirt 100 times and you pick up groceries all the time. But it's those little things that make all the difference. And it's the willingness to make the effort and change old habits that goes the distance. Story 4. Several, but off the top of my head, the sight of them does nothing for you. Getting a text or phone call from them elicits an eye roll. You try to avoid them. You cannot hold a conversation with them because everything they say is irritating. You really could not care less about their day or anything they have to say to you. You find yourself fantasizing of a life without them. And it makes you smile, just to name a few. Answer. That Daniel Sloss show where he talks about the point in those relationships where you accidentally find yourself hoping that they just die. Not because you want them to die, but just because them dying is the easiest way to get out of that relationship. And it doesn't involve either one of you getting hurt emotionally. One of the best stand-up shows I ever watched. If anyone hasn't seen it, watch it. The whole jigsaw bit is so powerful. Story 5. There are quite a few signs that a relationship is reaching its end, but the most common are as follows. Conversation has all but entirely stagnated. Many people mistake mutual interest for compatibility, but that inevitably leads to relationships which end once the getting to know you stage is over. If you find yourself struggling to converse with your partner, if you can't just talk about your day, rant to each other, or find new experiences to discuss, then it's likely that you'll end up going your separate ways before too much longer. Spending time with one another feels like a chore. Neither loving someone nor being in love with someone is enough to make a pairing last, especially if one of you feels like they're carrying more emotional weight than the other. If you dread the prospect of spending extended periods of time with your partner, or if you suspect that they have similar reservations about your interactions, it's generally a sign that the relationship is nearing its end. You keep finding venomous spiders in your underwear drawer. While it's true that many arachnids prefer to hide in dark, dry places, they lack the mental wherewithal to effectively inform others of their kind about choice vacation spots. As such, if you continually find spiders attempting to use your unmentionable as a gondola to your nether regions, there's a good chance that your significant other is responsible for their presence. This should be taken as a sign that not all is well between the two of you. Your partner is deviating from their routine without informing or including you. Everyone likes change from time to time, but humans are also creatures of habit. We typically only make large adjustments to our lives when something or someone significant has entered the picture. And if you've been kept in the dark about such a development in your partner's life, there's a good chance that they're intentionally withholding something from you. It won't necessarily be that they're cheating, though. They might be altering their commute so that they can make frequent stops at Honest Earl's Discount Fish and Appliance Repair, which, as everyone knows, is the premier place to shop for spiders. In short, there are a number of things that can signal the end of a relationship, but before you jump to any conclusions, it pays to be completely open, mature, and communicative. If nothing else, you'll both come away feeling significantly less hurt, and you'll both be significantly better off in the future. T.I. Boldy. 4 common signs of an impending breakup. Answer. You keep finding venomous spiders in your underwear drawer. When little Timmy paused to pick his daily underwear, he glanced across his options quick and chose himself a pair. How sweet it is, he whispered keen. How neat, he thought to say, to choose a pair of panties clean with which to start the day. You see, said he, there isn't much as half as nice to know than fabric on your balls and such, the softest touch below. And so it was he chose his pair. He made his pick with pride. He didn't see the spider there, and Timmy Fudge died. Story 6. The nature of the relationship changes. There's nothing as exciting as a new love. There's nothing as comfy as an old love. Don't confuse that change with the end of a relationship. It's when you just don't want to be around them anymore that the end has come. Story 7. When you discover irreconcilable differences, relationships take a lot of work. There will be times when you don't want to be together or when you're not intimacy in sync or whatever. Those things need to be worked through and your relationship will be stronger for it. The red flag I would watch out for is inherent differences in morality, beliefs, that kind of thing. Answer. The red flag I would watch out for is inherent differences in morality, beliefs, that kind of thing. Same. I used to wonder, how is it possible for so many people, mainly women, to say, I'll never date a Trump supporter or something similar, simply because I don't really care about politics all that much. But then I realized that I'm pretty much the same way, only for other things. I couldn't be with someone who's polyamorous, for example, or vegan. I love exclusivity and stakes way too much for that relationship to be viable. Even if they offer me exclusivity and have no problem with me eating meat on the daily, it's just not the same. Those fundamental incompatibilities fudge with your head. Story 8. While I couldn't pinpoint any one thing that was wrong, I started to get the sense he was annoyed with me. I said something wrong, he didn't want me around, etc. Trust your gut. Even if he's not experiencing anything wrong, you're clearly sensing something, so talk it out. Maybe he is cheating on you. Maybe you have unfounded trust issues. Man, when my husband and I were first dating, I would get this sense all the time and he always said nothing was wrong. Later, he'd tell me work was really stressing him out or something specifically happened that day. If your girl keeps asking what's wrong, just tell her. She probably thinks you're getting ready to dump her, and now she has anxiety too. Story 9. When you notice that your partner doesn't miss you, or vice versa, after being separated for a while. If you've been apart for a couple weeks or longer and your partner still feels no particular urgency to see you or talk to you, then the relationship is dead. Story 10. Finding yourself coming up with excuses or reasons to do stuff away from them. For me, it was learning to get up at 4 a.m., to go to the gym, be back in my own apartment by 5:30, and get 2 hours of video game time in because I needed it for my mental health. We broke up not too soon after I started trends like that. Story 11. They take work, so it's hard to tell. I'm going through an experience where she is always extremely negative, and every time we talk, it's her complaining about things in life. Yes, life is hard and shoot at times, but I'm not adopting your negative attitude, and I'm certainly not living with it. I've tried to help her, and give her resources all the time, but she doesn't do anything. Occasionally she apologizes and says, sorry, but I don't want apologies. I want her to fix the issues at the root. I'm just wondering, at what point do you give up? Because this is emotionally draining. You can't be the hero in relationships. Some people never change. Story 12. When spending time is something you have to give effort to actively think about and plan out, as opposed to something you look forward to and excitedly long for. I know that's what it was for me. She became a block in my schedule instead of the reason my schedule existed. Story 13. When their quirky habits become intolerable, if your relationship is more platonic than romantic, one or both of you are on their phone a lot more when you spend time together, when you have more arguments than conversations, if you have different levels of ambition and neither are willing to accept or compromise. Story 14. My ex-girlfriend's mother got ill and died. She then proceeded to blame for her passing, which made me note, I am not a doctor, so I couldn't help directly. I had enough when she blamed me, and it made me really depressed, sad and angry, so I broke up with her a month later. I know this makes me seem like a jerk for doing so, but I couldn't handle it anymore. I spent about 3 months after that crying randomly when nobody was around. Don't take blame for something you have no control over. It eliminates relationships. Story 15. My then husband did not go to my father's funeral with me and ripped me a new jerk after, when the guy I dated in high school, many years before at that point, showed up just to see if I was okay. When you realize that person does not have your back, it's over. Story 16. When you prefer your alone time over actually being with them. When you just don't care enough to argue anymore. When you realize you no longer share anything in common anymore, from general taste to life goals. When you envision your life without them. When you start to make decisions for yourself rather than as a couple. Story 17. If you don't care about the other one anymore, if you love them, you feel something. If you are fighting and you are angry, you feel something. But if you haven't seen them for a day and think like, yay, that's okay, I don't mind care, then it's mostly a sign that the relationship is over. Or at least it was for in my past. Story 18. When really hope for one of two things. 1, they die in some kind of painless way that is completely out of your control. Lightning strike. 2, you hope you win the Powerball so you can leave, give the other a decent chunk of money, and still live the life you always wanted. It's weird, I know, but I used to think about this a lot when I was married to my addict ex. Man, I'm really happy to not be reminded and belittled for not being perfect all the time. Story 19. There's a great book on marriage counseling, Why Marriages Succeed or Fail, though it's not specific to marriages. One of the main reasons they cite is failure to respond to bids. What's a bid? It's things like, hey, honey, come see this. Instead of watching TV, let's do a puzzle, play a game together, etc. Let's go out on a date this weekend. We haven't done that in a while. Can you give me a hand with this? Basically, it's bids for your SO's attention, time, or energy. It can be as simple as trying to hold their hand, get their attention, etc. When they slowly stop responding to them, things are in jeopardy. When they stop entirely, it's pretty much done. Story 20. Criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, contempt. If you have all 4, you're just as good as divorced. If there's only 3, there's a chance it might be saved if there is a willingness to work. Even cheating can be healed and forgiven if these 4 factors aren't in force. The obverse positive factors is appreciation, openness, communication, and respect. Any one of these can be used to bring in the other positive factors. Story 21. When your partner is putting more effort into their appearance than usual, but not investing that effort into looking good for you, when you've stopped inviting each other out, when you feel more like roommates than in a relationship, when your partner is hanging out with attractive members of the opposite intimacy and disregarding your feelings about it completely, when your partner has stopped complaining about any issues in general. Story 22. All I'm asking is, have you ever accidentally caught yourself thinking how much easier life would be if they were to just die? And not because you want them to die, but just because them dying's like the easiest way for you to get out of that relationship. And it doesn't involve either one of you getting hurt emotionally. Daniel Sloss. Story 23. All of a sudden, even their chewing irks you. Also, when you quietly cry in the dark during intimacy, that was a big fudge dude with sign, vigorously shaking it, screaming into a megaphone. An airplane banner flies overhead. You hear an irate Steve Carell in the crowd. Loud noises. A riot starts. Story 24. Can I just say to anyone here that is feeling this way, please just end it once you start feeling this way. Relationships are difficult and take a lot of work, but don't do what I did and start letting your mind wander instead. I was in a relationship for a while, and after things went sour, I wanted to end things for a while. She had done nothing wrong at all. If anything, she was perfect. We were just very different people, and our wants needs were different. Maybe it's because she was so great, But instead of breaking things off, I carried on, and the relationship went sour. In the end, I ended up talking to flirting with swapping photos with a girl whom I'd met years ago traveling. No intention of ever meeting with her as she was in another continent, but it felt nice to have some attention and flirtiness. Me and my girlfriend broke up a couple months after when she went through my phone and found the messages. It just isn't worth it at all. Causes so much extra hurt, and it can be avoided. Story 25. Mine personally, and I caught myself doing this twice with the same person both times we went out, was doing this thing that someone, I can't remember who, explained. It's where you say something along the lines of, yeah, we have our issues, but in a whiny voice that really isn't all that convincing at all. Story 26. People all say the loss of interest part, but I say another big factor is when everything she does seems to hurt you. Coming from an abusive relationship, if they start doing things that break your boundaries and hurt you, leave. If they can't hold personal responsibility for their actions, leave. If they blame you for everything, even if you had nothing to do with it, leave. If they put you down in arguments, leave. The relationship has run its course when someone starts showing you their true colors, and those colors paint you in a bad light. Story 27. When she makes me sleep on the small bench at the end of our bed because she has space issues. When she throws one of my Dundies and breaks my 200 plasma screen TV, and she can't pay me back on her $0 a year salary plus benefits. When she makes me think she's trying to poison my food. When she won't let me put up my neon St. Pauli girl beer sign, I think it ties the whole room together. When she makes fun of me for having soft teeth. When she makes me get 3 vasectomies because she isn't sure about having kids with him. Snip, snap, snip, snap. When we both like the schoolgirl role play, but as a man, I'm uncomfortable wearing the dress. When I'm unhappy, when I'm with her. Story 28. At the beginning of our relationship, my GF would always spontaneously sprinkle in these little acts of affection, physical and non-physical, throughout the day. Even when telling me to bring down the garbage or rinse the rim of the toilet bowl again, she'd add a cute honey and a tender, knowing smile to the end of her remarks. In the evening, when we sat in front of the TV, her hand would always rest in my boxers, her fingers playing with the long curls of my pubic hair. There wasn't anything intimacy about it necessarily. It was just constant, unfeigned care and attentiveness. You know the end is near when all of that ceases. Every interaction becomes work, disheartening even, leaving you frustrated instead of energized. Intimacy interactions become raw, primitive, transactional, and impersonal. Handjobs become fleshlight, jobs become electric toothbrush jobs from a distance. Now she doesn't even look at me anymore during, just holds up the rusty bucket for me to come into while she browses, raised by narcissists. Story 29. You want me to come over? I got an excuse, might be holding your hand, but I'm holding it loose. Go to talk, then we choke. It's like our necks in a noose. Avoid the obvious. We should be facing the truth. Start to think it could be fizzling out. Kind of shocked because I never really had any doubts. Look into your eyes. Imagine life without you. And the love kickstarts again. Me. Example. If it doesn't kickstart, it's run its course. Story 30. I'm a bit late to the party here, but I wanted to add my 2C as I've not seen this answer here yet. When you no longer kiss, I don't mean just a peck on the cheek, I mean really make out. When kissing them passionately begins to disgust you and feels like a chore, you might still be fudge, and the intimacy might even be great. But that first sign, that lack of passionate kissing, is one that fills me with dread every single time the first time it starts to happen. Story 31. If you are experiencing fog, fear of trying to communicate with your partner because they will take it the wrong way. Obligation, always feeling obligated to be doing something or other for them. Guilt, constant state of feeling guilty because they make you feel like you do everything wrong. Then it's time to leave the relationship. Story 32. When you no longer actively want to and seek out spending time together. When most situations wouldn't at least be a little better with them. Apart from the obvious separate social occasions, girls' night, boys' night. I thought I was madly in love with my ex. I then worked abroad for a bit, and he flew transatlantic to see me, but I was still too tired to do much when I wasn't in work and mostly wanted to hang out with my friends. I realized then it had gone pretty cold without me noticing. I know this makes me sound like a massive meanie, but I really didn't know it was over until I saw him. Story 33. Well, one would be asking online like this, lol. For me, it was when I realized she wasn't excited to see me or hear from me. I'd go out of my way to do something nice and not even get a fudge you. She totally lost interest. For fairness sake, by the last 3 to 4 months, I had 2. If your gut says it's over, it's probably over. You partied too hard sometimes, so try and not waste anymore. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is to let them go. Story 34. I got a few. You often find yourself hesitant to tell them about your interests, things you're excited about. You're frequently wishing that you had someone to talk to about things that are important to you. Your conversations often feel forced and uncomfortable. If you asked yourself, right now, what do I love about this person and what they do? And you can't think of them actually doing any of those things recently. This has been my best test, though. Try to get an idea of what may have been bothering you about the relationship. Because imagine, if your best friend's sibling, whatever, sat down with you one day and told you that their own relationship was like that, what would you say to them? In summary, I know it sounds cliche, but you want to be with someone who makes you happy and lets you be yourself without worrying about their judgment. You deserve that. And if that's not how you're feeling in your relationship, it might be time to have a talk, reevaluate, whatever makes things better for you. Sometimes issues can be worked out and improved between you by working together to address things. Sometimes they just can't. But whatever the case, you deserve to feel appreciated. So find someone that makes you feel appreciated. It's worth it. You're worth it. Story 35. When you're giving 100 and they're giving a lot less, your needs are being ignored even after you express what's bothering you. That's when you know you are being taken for granted. Nothing worse than feeling rejected a million times when you're desperately trying to love someone who just pushes you away more and more. That's when it's time to just call it what it is. You can't make others love you or accept your love when they're not receiving on the other end. I'd say any relationship that lacks communication is a dead one. The scales need to be balanced equally. When it's not, it'll tip over. What you give is what you get in the end. Story 36. When you find yourself anxious at the thought of meeting them and spending time with them, and you'd rather do something else. When you realize you have made a lot of one-way compromises and changed a lot about who you were for them and not necessarily for the better. When any disagreement leads to an argument and you find yourself having to constantly walk on eggshells around them and think twice before you say anything and go through all the possible scenarios to find the one that won't lead to an argument. When you actually feel much better when they're busy for a while and not texting you, and you get to enjoy time with friends, but as soon as they're back, it's anxiety all over again. And like other people say, when conversation has run dry and it's no longer interesting to talk to them, or you realize you aren't going in the same direction in life. Story 37. When the two of you can't have fun together anymore. I've seen a lot of couples that rely on their friends for enjoyment. The types of couples that never go on a trip alone or go anywhere alone. If you can't have a fun date with your SO, it might be a red flag. Story 38. When you don't fully know how your partner is feeling anymore. When he or she starts doing things that don't include you or you didn't even know about. No more emotional connection. No more intimacy. Communication has all but died except for the very basest or information transfer. You need dinner. I paid this bill. Dog is running out of food, etc. And you don't use terms of endearment any longer. Babe, honey, sweetie. Back to first name basis with a twinge of spite in the word. Story 39. When you start to believe that you're asexual because intimacy is very lackluster and the thought of it with them isn't a fun thought. Or when you start preparing yourself to say no in the situation that they propose to you. Trust me, you will know. And then when you find one that is right, everything feels like it is going to be okay regardless of what happens. You will know when you are with that someone. I sure as hell know I am with them right now. Added another reason. Story 40. None of you are apparently married and don't enter relationships with the same idea of commitment I must have. Answer: when one or both people have given up and you're 1 in 10, sure, there's no way back for them. Usually after cheating or many months or years of some kind of abuse or neglect. Other than that, I've found even one random beautiful day after weeks or even months of being in a rut can completely revive a relationship. Seriously, once you just reconnect, it's almost as good as the honeymoon phase for a while until the cycles of relationships once again happens and you find yourself back in that rut. Relationships are cyclical, and the bad times are what build strong one. If you find yourself constantly breaking up with someone in the first year, that in itself is part of why you constantly fail. Enjoying yourself in less than ideal circumstances is what allows for people to be married for 50 years, and life is going to suck sometimes, no matter what you do. So I have no idea why the hell Reddit is always don't stay in a relationship that only just got bad in the last few months, because your boyfriend currently has depression. And no, We're not going to address that. Courses. Who has time to help the person they're dating through a rough patch? Or what this shoot is, I always see from Ask Men and Ask Women. Boulder. Kind of a wrongly worded question for what's a simple answer. When someone literally will never care deeply about that person again. Relationships are about failing and getting back on that horse and trying again until it's better than before, and the bond is stronger and deeper. Story 41. Most of my stuff is just hindsight, but this is personal experience. Was in a 2-month relationship with a younger guy, and he dumped me 3 weeks ago. We, and this is important, both have no relationship experience. Here's some things I noticed. He lacked communication. Not only in conflict, but also in the way that the reason he dumped me could have been sorted out through communication of needs. X. It was something he never discussed with me, yet it's like he wanted to blame me after. Shutting down in an argument, disagreement. He said a slur once, twice, or even 3 times that I was uncomfortable with. I explained to him I don't like it, and for the rest of the night and next day he seemed distant. His parents were immature. I met them for dinner, and his father kept explaining to me that there's a British dish that has what Americans would consider a slur as part of the name. He kept saying it aloud too. It was so uncomfortable. They were divorced too. Wonder why. Hygiene. I found out he never flosses his teeth or uses bar soap. All in all, never saying that I didn't do anything wrong either. But the major issue I have now looking back is his overall immaturity and lack of communication skills. Time to date older men, LOL. Story 42. When all you do is look forward to the moments you're not with them, when you feel happy that you're not around them, regardless of how they're doing, when you feel nothing if they're crying, when you can't answer honestly if somebody asks how you, your significant other, or the relationship is doing, when you lie to yourself that everything is okay or will work out with your partner, when you tell yourself that your feelings mean nothing. If any of these situations resonate with you, it's time to end the relationship. Don't be like me and get stuck in an abusive relationship that you don't feel you have the option to leave. Story 43. I realized one day that I would work overtime and stay late at work almost every night because it meant less time I'd spend at home with my significant other. That was the day I realized something had to change or the relationship needed to end. Relationships shouldn't always feel like a chore. Story 44. When they just stop trying, everything you do irritates them, and even during intimacy. Your needs don't matter, just what makes them happy. It hurts when you're the only one who wants it, and you notice how much your partner doesn't seem to care or know what they want. It's painful in itself. The cold, hard truth is that some people just like what you have to offer, and once they have enough, they'll toss you to the side. You give your all, and when you need them, they dip. Messes you up, but it's life. End it before they do. You'll feel less hurt and have some form of self-esteem. Know your worth. Story 45. When you try to hang it out with them, they ignore you. They push you off when you hold their hand or lean on them. They don't want to kiss or cuddle even. They say it's moving too fast when they were the ones who first suggested it, and y'all have dated for over a year. When they call you toxic. When they shame you when you have doubts about their feelings. When they judge you and point out your flaws. When they have to actually think to want to show you love. When you ask them for love and they look at you like they've never heard the word before. Basically acting as if being around you is just horrible. Doesn't want to do anything besides do stuff that doesn't involve you. It sucks. And that's why you get out instead of getting stuck like me. But I got myself out after a while. But it still hurts at times. But I'm in a better relationship. Those who care while y'all are friends and care for everyone and feel you're hurt. Go for those. Not the others that are nice for a week for you to fall for them. Story 46. For me, it was when I realized I didn't care anymore. Didn't care if he was staying out late. Didn't care if he spent all his time playing LOL. Didn't care that he ruined all my good towels hotboxing our bathroom, even though he promised he wouldn't bring plant substance into our new house. Didn't care when he was sick. He could have cheated on me, and I wouldn't have cared. Just truly did not give a shoot about him at all. His well-being, about him as a person, nothing. He could have died, and it would have invoked the same reaction as hearing when a stranger dies. Oh, that's sad. Oh, well. So maybe when you realize you dislike them, it's time to leave. Story 47. I had a couple of posts on this thread, and good God, I may be channeling Mr. Rogers, but before you ever take advice from an internet stranger, be sure you have talked to your partner first. The hive mind, as we call it, may just have you pile driving a partner away that actually is worth your time. The hive mind is strange that way. Love is in a state of perfect caring. It is an active noun like struggle. To love someone is to strive to accept that person exactly the way he or she is, right here and now. But that's certainly a line you have to find for yourself, and that's up to you. Story 48. When you make up shoot, to do at work so that you can work late, and you pray on the drive home that this person is in bed asleep when you get there. They never are, and you can never hide your disappointment in that. Also, if you avoid conversations because you're terrified that no matter what you do or say, this person will yell at you and attack you personally, and you're not sure if your fragile ego can take that. Story 49. When you're the only one trying to make any kind of plan work, big or small, and the others show no sign of appreciation whatsoever. No matter how you try to reframe the situation, no matter how positive, they just don't want to and believe you're making fun of them instead. Said they expect more and more from you as they use the quality of holiday gifts plans as a benchmark of your commitment. Like, wow. As if maintaining and fixing utilities for you wasn't enough already. They get upset over little things. You're too late or too early. Sparks do feel great, but you can't stay warm for two if both are not tending to the fire. Story 50. When there's nothing left to talk about. When you don't enjoy each other's company anymore and can't hold a conversation with the other person. When your life goals, career, marriage, family, where to live, etc., are very different. Sometimes it's that you've progressed and grown, yet the other person is exactly how she was when you met them. A lot of people say they hope that the other never changes, but if you can't grow together, the relationship is doomed to fail. You can't exist on fond memories. Friendships are very similar in that way. Story 51. If the other person can't apologize for anything, even when they make an obviously out-of-line comment or are just rude as hell, you are not their prince or princess in shining armor, and anyone who wants to hold trivial things against you when you've already tried to be the best man or woman you can be. That's one time you either have to fix things or get the hell away, I'm sorry. There's Cinderella, and then there's Cruella de Vil, and you have to learn the difference. Story 52. When you basically dislike everything they do and everything about them annoys the fudge out of you and you feel like you could just choke them for even breathing too loud. When you start imagining how good your life would be without them. You may still have some distant love feelings mixed in at this time, but you also know deep down that the relationship is no longer healthy or viable. Story 53. When the intimacy stops, it's a good sign that she is no longer interested in you. Or you could come home and find all of her things gone and no note or phone call, leaving you in a house with a few pieces of furniture, an empty fridge, and pictureless walls. Now I know what an abandoned dog felt like. Story 54. When they keep saying that they will make changes or do simple things like washing the dishes and then never do it, over and over again. When you are financially and emotionally supportive and the only thing they can contribute to your needs are cuddles. When they take your card out of your wallet while you are asleep to buy cigarettes and only offer to pay you back after you ask them if they used your card. I could keep going, but I want... Story 55. My ex was laying on the couch playing a game on her phone, and I bent down to give her a kiss, and she shoved my head out of the way. It was a crossword puzzle game, the kind with no pause button necessary, not one of those blink and you'd miss something type games. Okay, I see where our marriage fits into your priorities. Story 56. Many people will think that once arguments become common in a relationship, it's a breaking point. Eventually, in any romantic relationship, there are going to be fights. Bad ones, stupid ones that make you question whether you and your partner are actually in love. It's part of the acclimation process. No matter what, even if someone loves you for who you are, you will have to change for them, even if it's something minor. This can be unhealthy, though. If you feel you must change your entire being for someone, but in the end, everyone is different. You're two different people, and you will have differences. This causes the arguments, as previously mentioned. But in the end, it's what holds two people together. It's not easy either, the arguments. So bear that in mind. I'm going through that phase right now, and as terrible as it feels, I know it's for the better. Story 57. Darn, this hits close to home. Every day my SO and I argue and say we're done. Every night we're back cuddling each other to sleep. Our relationship with is so rocky, and every time I'm mad, I want to leave, but that feeling subsides. Sometimes I just can't help but stare at him. I can't tell him how much I love his stupid jerk and how I'd do anything to make this work. I'd marry him, I swear, but he doesn't like to talk about his feelings. So I just stare. I feel he loves me too, otherwise I think he would have left. I could be wrong. I realize that maybe I don't know what it feels like to be loved anyway. So I can't ever tell if he wants to be with me or he's just waiting for a way out. Grown. Story 58. Unresolved resentment. The deadly poison that eliminates relationships. It's like not taking HTE trash out it builds and builds. Even tiny things, yet even leaving that dirty sock on the floor, till one day you realize you don't or they don't love the other person anymore. By the time you realize it, the trash pile is so huge, it's too late. Make sure you take the trash out every day, that there is nothing left in the morning. The straw that can break the camel's back can be truly small and seemingly insignificant. Resentment is the relationship killer. Love is not a genie you can put back in the bottle. Unlove is sudden realization it's over, it's gone. So is your relationship. If you truly love someone, you might forgive something huge. But forgiveness is useless if someone realizes the love is gone, attempts to change the other person. You fell in love with someone, perfection in your eyes or theirs. So why do we later try to change who they are? Well, they delude ourselves themselves. Marriage is as is. There is no warranty. Taking people for granted. Best thing that ever happened to you in your life. And you let that turn to shoot? Relationships should be worth investing serious, continuous effort into. After all, it's probably the most important thing in your life. Every day should include some of the same stuff you did when you were first finding each other. Keep the magic alive. Do your best and let them do their best. Dictate nothing. Expect nothing. Give freely, and you should not have to worry about getting. When one spouse talks to the other spouse the way a parent talks to a child, never use your parent voice on your partner. Use your child voice for intimacy or adult voice for mutual respect in public. It's an equal partnership or it's doomed by resentment. When inconsideration enters the picture, indifference. When the positive verbal and nonverbal communication stops, keep doing the little things that is say I love you. Don't expect anything in return. Don't be discouraged and don't give up or it does not count. Story 59. A few signs from my marriage. Always on the phone, never intimate, ever, like 4 years of no touching or cuddling. Gets angry and mad over shortcomings, but doesn't help fix them at all. Very independent of each other. My ex ghosted next for 2 weeks before I finally caved and got a lawyer. Felt like I had a better relationship with my roommates over my own husband, who was an absolute slob. Another thing was kids. I had wanted kids and he told me we could try as soon as we were financially stable, but we had been for years and he kept saying he wasn't ready, but would buy like 6 pairs of shoes like, if you don't want a kid, don't give me hope. Story 60. When they disappear the night you get home from surgery, after telling you they were going to visit their parents, and you, in pain and groggy and desperate for bed, unable to drive because you've just had surgery, then spend 4 hours calling everyone you can think of because they're not answering their phone, and you're terrified they're dead in a ditch somewhere, only for them to finally answer their phone, come home, and tell you they were just driving around for 4 hours. And like an idiot, you accept it because you're simply so relieved they're okay and safe. And you're tired because you'd had surgery that day and you've been together 7 years. So surely they wouldn't treat you so shamefully after 7 years, would they? Would they? Story 61. When you find out they still have Fudge Bumble on their phone from when you weren't exclusive. We didn't even meet on Bumble. I don't care how much you haven't used it. You still broke my Fudge trust. This and realizing your partner is emotionally immature. I hope I choose better next time. Story 62. The problem is that people give up on relationships too easily these days as soon as it becomes slightly difficult. They have this misconception that relationships are easy, like in movies, TV shows, and fairy tales, and don't want to put the work in. They want the easy option. Story 63. When you aren't excited to introduce them to new friends, when you don't want to have new experiences with them, but without them, when their opinions don't matter, when being together is a routine for intimacy and everything else is boring, when you don't feel like yourself around them. Story 64. When they constantly make jokes about how terrible marriage is in front of you and rave about how cool it would be to move back in with their mom, even though they have a very comfortable income and are a 34-year-old grown jerk man. Edit, added more bitterness. Story 65. I once ended a relationship because I was in a play, and a guy in the play was more considerate, just a random friend that I had only known a couple of weeks, than my boyfriend was. My then boyfriend and I weren't even really talking anymore at that point, and the fact that he was away at school and we never saw each other didn't help. This friend in my play just brought it to light that I wasn't being treated like that anymore, and I ended a relationship that had already been over for a while. Story 66. When you are both snapping at each other for the smallest of reasons, not wanting to even speak to each other for day on end, and then realizing that you both need a break. This just happened to be today. And then I saw this post and thought, it's just my relationship as well. I hope everyone that is getting like this does work it out, because it is probably one of the hardest things to do. Story 67. From what I can tell, it's when people come to me or my friends for advice, which sooner or later turns into a rant. The fact that they are allowed to say what bothers them about their relationship to someone sometimes really is an eye-opener. However, more often than not, it still takes a while until they end their relationship entirely, as they still love them. Story 68. When she goes to Vegas for a work convention and comes home changed, doesn't want anything to do with you, but now has some new habits like clutching her phone at all times, closing doors to rooms while you're home only to talk text on the phone. If you enter said room, it's met immediately with hostility and haste to remove you. Then when you ask simple questions like, "Are you cheating on me?" and her response is, "Well, I can see how it looks that way, but no. Can you leave now?" Just to name a few things. Story 69. When I stopped caring when my boyfriend was being a jerk, that's when I knew it was over. He would act awful, and I'd be like, "Ugh, I'm too tired of his shoot to care," or "Oh, nothing new here." When they wrong you so often that it just doesn't even bug you anymore, that relationship needs to end. Story 70. I got mad at her, in my head, on her birthday because she hadn't gotten up and taken a shower yet at 9 a.m. Completely irrational, as she can do whatever she wants. I was just looking for a reason to be irritated. Slogged through the day with a smile, took her to her favorite restaurant, waited 3 days and broke up. Getting irritated over nothing if it's not the norm for you is a pretty clear sign you're over them. Story 71. When you feel like you're walking on egg when you express yourself or just act like who you are for fear they will get mad at you, or if they tell you about how much potential they see in you, that means your relationship was doomed from the start, Amo. Story 72. Practically most of what is mentioned here, and here I am not being able to walk away because of how crappy life has been to her, and I just can't help but want her to be well aside me, bottling all my feelings and resentments, craving for my solitude. She got depression and anxiety. Her brother got some psychological problems threatening her parents not understanding her, and she got heart issues and is currently undergoing blood transfer and bone marrow transplant, giving her panic attacks, insensitive emotions bursting out all on me with no one to lean on. Well, story 73. I knew it was over when his shoot behavior didn't even bother me. Getting too tipsy, not being considerate. I wasn't hurt or mad or how could you do this? I just didn't give a fudge. I was getting so self-sufficient that I was living my own life and he just happened to be there. What solidified it was finding private pictures, photos of another girl on this phone that his friends sent to him from some chick his friend was talking to. I didn't feel hurt or betrayed in the slightest, just disgusted more than anything. And before you give me the sure they were for his friend spiel, I would honestly have preferred it if he was talking to a girl and got the private pictures himself, because that would make him less disgusting and pathetic. Oh, and choosing to self-care even though he was in the house, lol. Story 74. Talking from a men's perspective, well, from my experience, there are some things that will happen. She will start doing things that she didn't do when she would hang with you. For me, it was that she was starting to use her phone a lot more. 2, trying to make you jealous so she has a reason to make a fight. You are probably going to see her less and less friendly advice. Never trust your GF best friends. Last relationship I got played and she cheated on me. Today we stayed friends but lost contact. Story 75. I see a lot of comments here that cut me deep, so I just want to say to everyone here that's sticking it out, you aren't doing them a favor, you aren't doing you a favor. Both of you have to choose into the relationship for it to work. If you're dreading going home, rolling your eyes at what they say, or getting irritated when I hate just exist, get out. It may hurt for a while, but it will be better in the long run. Don't trap yourself into an unhealthy life where you have no escape. Coming from a divorced family, as long as it is done right, your kids will benefit far more from a divorce or breakup than seeing two people who dislike each other live together. Seek help, work on yourself, and think to the future. You'll never be able to be in a healthy relationship until you are grounded and healthy yourself. My ex-wife was manipulative, abusive, and utterly dependent on me. She hid it all behind a shield of generalized anxiety brought on by intimacy assault at an early age. She was treading water in therapy and there was no progression. She always said she wasn't ready to try the cognitive therapy. I did all I could to learn about anxiety and try and keep her as happy and comfortable as I could to avoid fighting, but it was exhausting. I was miserable in taking it out on my body. I had to drink just to stand to be in the same room as her. She wanted to change everything about me, and when she would finally get a rise out of me enough to fight back, she would back off, play the victim, and blame her disorder. None of it was okay. I decided to leave last year. I told her I'd be happy to still talk to her, but I really needed to spend some time focusing on me because she, or rather, me being with her, was holding me back and literally eliminate me. I didn't want to have kids with her. I didn't want to buy a house with her, despite her trying to get me to do both, presumably to try and make me stay. She said she didn't want any relationship with me at all anymore, which I was also okay with. Fast forward and it's almost been a year. Eve lost 70 celbs, quit drinking, and I'm getting straight A's in school. I don't blame her for my lack of progression, but our relationship was taking far too much out of me. I felt like I was being chipped away piece by piece, but now I'm stronger than ever. Yes, I should have spoken up earlier. Warned her that I was going to leave. I gave her 6 months to change my mind about our relationship, but we only grew further apart. We weren't meant to be. It's sad because we could have been really good friends. She has my dog, her emotional support animal, and it took every fiber of my soul to leave him. He was the brightest part of my life. I just knew I needed to get out for both of us. And that's the point. Don't let your pride make you hold on to something that isn't there. There is no shame in wanting to be happy. Thanks for reading, if you did. I'm doing great now, but have no idea how to talk to women anymore, lol. I'm sure it'll come back eventually, and when I'm ready, TL. Don't stay in a relationship if you are not happy. It's not healthy and doesn't help anyone. Story 76. This thread had helped me cope with a recent devastating rejection. Knew them for 26 years, but clearly it was over due to reasons listed here. The worst part is that we live in the same area and I can't move away because I'm broke, jobless, and have to try therapy again despite being burned multiple times. Because of this stupid crush, I've never been able to date anyone else. Despite sign after sign over the years, she wasn't interested. And 2 of the cruelest rejections earlier in my life, 10 years apart. I'm a train wreck. Story 77. You get a message from your girlfriend's coworker you've never met, explaining she just found out you exist and that you should probably look at these text screenshots of your girlfriend describing how she loves to get 69'd to another guy, which is apparently just a friend. Or, I don't know, just my experience? Story 78. Well, I realized I needed to break up with my first girlfriend when we ran into some friends of hers at the mall, and I couldn't even bring myself to make small talk with them. I just found a chair, sat down, and waited for her to finish talking to them. What scared me was how spontaneous it was. I didn't even realize what I was doing until I'd sat down. Story 79. When the trust in your partner just isn't there, it could be a buildup of little white lies or a big one such as cheating or something. But once one party has lost trust in the other, it's game over, in my opinion. Just too much anxiety and stuff to think about. Story 80. When you just don't care. I am a poor person, but I am a great BF. I am dedicated. So the night one of my exes cut her wrists and I just walked by shaking my head, I knew it was over. She manipulated me like mad with it for 3 years. And honestly, the fact I walked by still makes me cringe. I am the type to run to someone and make everything okay. I even said something like, it isn't deep enough since I knew she was doing it for show, which is fudge up on me. Even then I came back and watched her all night, worried she might have taken something without my knowledge. She just kept using tragic end as some weapon, knowing full well I'd panic and try to rescue her. She liked that. I still have love for her and hope she is doing much better. Story 81. When you have to walk on eggshells to keep them from accusing you of making them walk on eggshells. In other words, you can't even ask them to stop peeing on the toilet seat without them saying you are trying to control their whole life. And they are cis female. Story 82. When every day is a challenge, you're always fighting, you're never happy. When that person becomes someone you dread coming home to see, you rather be anywhere but home. Rather hang out with anyone but them. Rather do anything that takes you away from home, no matter how tired you are. Story 83. It starts with taking the other person for granted. Soon you won't want to spend time with them. Eventually you will look forward to it with dread. Eventually words will be exchanged, and they're meant to hurt them. If you haven't got some help by this point, you might as well kiss the relationship goodbye. Story 84. 23 years old here, living out with my girlfriend who used to be my fiancée before our huge fight, among many, many others. I'm speaking from current experience as of this very minute, so I'll give you my top 3. 1. Not showing love or appreciation. I'm the literal man of the house, which means that after work, I cook and I clean. And when I say that I clean, I mean I clean everything. Everything. She gets home about an hour later than I do and just barrels her way through, undressing, leaving shoot on the floor, tracking in hay and dirt. And then I assemble her dinner and she goes to sleep for another early morning and a long day. No, I love you. No show of love. No, thank you. No show of appreciation. Yay, guess the bed just cleaned and made itself. Also, what's with that infinite supply of clean laundry that seems to appear? And dinner? Made itself, didn't it? I forgot to mention that my good friend Merlin came by and bibbidi-bobbidi-booed the entire apartment into shape. She rarely, if ever, says, I love you, after a phone call. And anytime I confront her about anything, she goes on the defensive about being hangry or tired. And by the time those problems are solved, she's asleep. And I've told her many times to clean up after herself, but it never changes. Ever. It's been 2 years going on 3 now. 2, not being friends. She and I haven't gone on a date in a long time, and in fact, we're not friends before becoming a thing. We just went from FWB to an on-off relationship to an official relationship, but we never really hung out, if that makes sense. I just tagged along with her to her barn, or we watched Grey's Anatomy or another show. We never actually were friends. And for another fact, I don't feel like we click as people. We've exercised all the right shoot to make the relationship work, but the lack of friendship in history really shows through. It's been nothing but an uphill climb for us because of how different we are. 3, not making the first step. She and I don't really go on dates often or at all anymore. It just isn't like that. We're way too darn busy. And on our days off, she in particular is dead. And I don't care to hang out with someone who has no energy. Truly, I don't. Call it a me problem. I don't care. But I have made the effort in the past to get the ball rolling on a date, but shoot has always come up because being a barn manager makes for an unpredictable life. But I have tried to set up dates. I really have, but she rarely has. And so when the issue comes up, the onus gets put on me. That's right. Blame game. If you are experiencing this despite having talked it out, prepare to move on like I am because it doesn't get better. You can try harder, love harder, do whatever the fudge you want, but the river's been run dry. Everything she does against me is a decision at this point, and I'm not a fan. Story 85. Where you have to call and ask to do anything first, where you fantasize about someone else during intimacy, where you get into any argument over anything big or small, and if you don't have kids, asking for permission to buy something. God, I'm glad I'm out of that ray trace crap. Story 86. If on Friday night at 5 o'clock-ish, you're cooking dinner for yourself and 2 kids, your SO is not home, 2 cops show up at the door and tell you you have to leave because you has filed an ex parte restraining order. They let you to turn off the stove, pick up your shaving gear, 1 change of cloths, and because you have 2 cars, you can take 1. If that happens, it's pretty much over. Story 87. Well, it kind of depends on your partner's way of thinking. For me, I knew we were going to break up when she started to avoid me. And when I tried to approach her, she would say she was busy and would stop texting me. I have another GF now and I've moved on, but that still hurts whenever I think about it. Story 88. My wife friend zoned me at least 10 years ago. She is no longer interested in me in any physical or intimate sense, so the shelf life has passed, I guess. It bothered me greatly at first, as I was still very physically attracted to her, but after years of it being a one-way street relationship, I lost interest in her as well. We are on good terms, but we are really nothing more than roommates at this point. It only hurts when I think about it. Story 89. When the ice caps melt and the ocean life dies due to acidification and pollution, when you've made your life about eliminate and eating other animals so important that your antibiotics no longer work, when you allow your responsibilities to be left to madmen and women, extinction is the big breakup and Mother Nature bats last. X200B, sayonara. See ya, so long, and farewell. Story 90. Have a total indifference to them in their presence, wishing that they would leave so that you can get some peace and sow your own thing. Not wanting to talk about shoot, just saying whatever or yep, and not even listening to them. Realizing that you are calmer and happier when they aren't around. Story 91. You don't seem overly bothered at the thought of them breaking up with you. Happened with my ex of 4 years. We finished about 3 weeks ago. She went off to Scotland for 2 weeks for work, and I had a feeling it was over. I get a text a week and a half later. I haven't even shed a tear. I felt a bit down, but packing her stuff and putting it all in a bin bag was very therapeutic. Story 92. When spending time with them is just a chore at all times. Yes, you will have times where you feel like it is a chore, or you're constantly feeling like you have to work to be around them. I worked with a girl that I became close friends with, but after the new friendship fund passed, she would become really irritable whenever I was expressing my own opinion. Anything that challenged her own would just lead her to insulting me. After a while, I felt like I was pre-checking everything I said, and then over-analyzing it afterwards to see if it was offensive to her specifically. Still work with her, certainly aren't friends anymore. And I've undone all that manipulative behavior modification. She despises me for it. Story 93. I would recommend songs, and they wouldn't listen to them. Looking back, that was the first sign. There were, of course, other things, but that one stood out. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was a few songs that when I asked if they had listened to them, they just said no. Still makes me sad to think about it. Story 94. When your significant other all of a sudden starts suspecting cheating with no evidence. This is a sign of deflection, or they trying to break up with you and make it your fault. If this happens, you should definitely start getting suspicious. I learned this the hard way. I got cheated on. Story 95. When, instead of being excited to see them, you instead are anxious and have panic attacks. When you have to be a completely different person around them versus around your friends. When you stop opening up, sharing, and being vulnerable because they are so closed off and judgmental at times. Story 96. I went through nearly a year's worth. A lot of the things you guys described were us to a T. We said horrible things to one another, things we didn't mean. Somewhere through 19 years, we had become rivals. I'd like to add we had 4 arguments, barely worth mentioning, in the first 15 years. I realized we were doomed when insecurity and mistrust became a constant concern. The most discouraging part, when I had absolute, irrefutable proof of my innocence, she didn't want to see it. She didn't care if I was right or wrong. I was wrong. Now, I didn't know if I can tell you when a relationship has run its course. I can tell you this, her car was still in sight when I realized the only thing I ever wanted was her happiness. I hope she is with no regard for my own feelings. That was love. It still is. Thank you for letting me get that out. Story 97. When you come home from work one night and you notice a pair of boxers on the floor that aren't yours, but your girlfriend says they're the ones she got you for your birthday, and you relax, but then you notice there's a stain on the front. You pick them up. They're sticky, fresh stain. You smell them and they smell like semen. You get suspicious, so you look around the house and you can't find anyone. Again, you relax. You sit down in your living room and try to turn the lamp on. It doesn't turn on. You pull the switch a few more times. Putting your reading glasses on, you realize you aren't pulling on a lamp. You are pulling on a big ol' mandingo. Story 98. When you start experimenting a lot more with intimacy, in a vain attempt to reignite any spark that was left. So you suggest a group scene and your partner is all too excited while immediately having someone in mind. But hey, what have you got to lose? Which leads to them fudge harder and more passionately than you've ever experienced while you self-care in the corner. Story 99. I was in a relationship where within the first 3 months, I was convinced that I loved this girl and was going to marry her. Basically, she took that as an opportunity to manipulate me and destroy me mentally. She was constantly doing things like telling me how fat I am. I'm only 150 pounds, mind you. Isolating me from my friends and family, leaving a significant number of venomous spiders in my underwear drawer, and diverting every conversation to my character flaws. It wasn't until I was changing my chonies one day, only to find myself face